Hey everybody, welcome to What Drives Us episode 300 and oh my god, is it 327? There goes my flow right away.
337. It's 337.
337. I'm so lost. 337 for October 16th, 2019. I think my name is Russell. I'm not sure. But I'm going to introduce everybody because we have a huge hour and we have 1 hour to do it in. So my co-host, the man with the fancy earbuds, the nice dress shirt, and the Yeti microphone, Mr. Tony Schaefer.
Yes, I got the Yeti back. I'm so excited. Hey, everyone. So tonight I'm drinking what's called a double dog dare. And you can see the kid riding a two-headed beast there, I think. Yeah, hey, it's a great show. We do have a lot of news. Looking forward to it.
He is the founder and owner and main technician and all-around good guy of Boulder Hybrids. You can find him at Boulder H or boulderhc.com. Mr. Paul Guzik.
Hey, everybody. Glad to be back. And it's too bad Mark's not here because I would share with him this beer, which...
Is it a Molson?
It's a session beer out of Oregon, but I think they stole all the beer bottles from Canada from the 80s.
The shirt, like the red stripe bottle.
Yeah.
And Mark would remember this.
I'm old enough to remember that.
Well, but in Canada, every single beer came in the same bottle. They had a recycling pool, and Molson's would take Labatt's bottles and clean them and recycle. All they did was change the label each batch. It was great. It was very eco. We should be talking about it on the show. Yeah. And then they went to unique bottles.
And here we are talking about it on the show.
Yeah. So
I love that. Well, speaking of things I love, he is at an undisclosed location somewhere in the Mid-Atlantic region. I think might still be enjoying his dinner, but I'm going to introduce him nonetheless. Mr. Casey Green.
I think he's muted.
Mr. Green, your microphone's muted, I think. Did Tony do that to you?
I did.
Oh, you did not. Unmute him. How do you do that?
I can't. That's the funny part. I can't unmute.
Huh. What?
I'm trying to figure it out. Only he can unmute himself.
How about now?
Yeah. There we go. We
can hear you just Tony was making threats before the show, and apparently he made good on them, but they were supposed to be effective during the show. Anyway. Yes, here I am in the home office. It's in another state of disarray. So that's what you get.
There we go. Well, the state of disarray is one I've lived in most of my life, so I understand it. And speaking of disarray, last and not least, our friend in the Midwest in the exciting Icelandic Jersey, Dr. Evan Fusco.
Hey, everybody. Good to be on. I am spurning beer and instead having a little McClelland Isla single malt scotch.
I swear, all I can see is this little tiny icon, and it looked like you just were holding up a big joint. And I went, no way. No way is Fusco doing that.
If he only can do it, I can do it.
Yeah.
It's legal here, friend. Well, let's get right to it. Being the self-serving bastard that I am, and that's definitely me, I want to talk about an event that I was at. Wait for here comes the big shocker with Danny Cooper. Who here in the audience remembers who Danny Cooper is? Hold up your hand.
I'm going to have to Google it.
I'm looking. Yes, Danny Cooper.
So he wasn't kidnapped by foreign agents? Or
yeah, something like that.
He made it out of the house. In fact, Danny Cooper and I drove from his hometown to this event. This was, here's the thing. This was a Toyota event, and it was called Evolution.
Wow, they must have been getting ready to introduce their brand new all-electric fleet of battery electric cars at this event, since it's called Evolution. Tell us about that, Russell.
So it featured all Toyota's all-fuel cars. It featured no battery electric cars.
But it's called
EV. But EV, isn't the EV in the name?
Evolution.
It is called Evolution.
Come on, they must have spent $130,000 on Evolution. Because that's so original.
And all they did is gave people room key cards to the someone's hotel room.
We got a button.
Hospitality suite.
We got a button.
And
Anybody else got a button?
Yeah, but it doesn't start an electric car.
It doesn't start anything, actually. This was a celebration of Toyota's achievements over the past 20 years in alt-fuel cars. And it featured the centerpiece of the event was the unveiling, the very first unveiling of the brand new Mirai. Now, I know all of you on the panel are already just sweaty thinking about the 2G Mirai. Yeah. Evan, he's speechless.
It's a lot more than the original.
It's too early to start cursing in this show, isn't it?
We can start bashing them already. I mean, it's.
This is
the car
Russell,
is great technology. It's just not going to happen in our lifetime.
Not without Japanese subsidies.
Yeah, I was going to say, and Russell, who admits to have produced the one and only positive review of the first gen.
Mr. Negativity?
That was me. That was
me.
I got invited to Evolution.
He's not so much
I did get
negativity as Mr. Contrarian.
Contrarian. There we go.
I hate contrarianism, but nonetheless, yes. And the only reason my first generation Mirai review was positive was at the very beginning. I automatically threw out the huge elephant in the hydrogen room, which is, where's the hydrogen coming from?
And then they promptly shut down half of the stations.
We're going to talk more about that in a minute. But okay. This was number one, the new Mirai. It's way nice looking. Way nicer looking.
I described it on Twitter as it no longer looks like a sweaty Prius.
There was a lot of like Prius talk, and I remember like a lot of people were saying, "Oh, the first generation Prius was so ugly and weird."
That one looked like a fat Echo.
Right, and it's like the first generation Prius looked like a car.
Yeah,
it didn't look like anything. It was the second gen Prius that was really distinctive. Is that fair?
Yeah,
that's fair. Yeah, very fair.
Sometimes the little revisionist memory that we go through.
Well, no, I just think, compared to the other cars that were on the market at the time the Gen 1 came out, it was still pretty ugly. I mean, it was had these very weird rounded edges, and it just was, I don't know, it just looked so generic and boring. And you're right, the Gen 2 really kind of got everyone's attention, and some hated it and some of us loved it, and but at least it made sense, the reasons they went that direction.
Right.
So I'm hoping they went in the opposite way with the Mirai, right? The first one kind of polarizing. Is the second one much more commercially viable?
Well, I mean, the consensus in the room of the media that was there was very positive on this, on the looks of the new Mirai.
Are you going to share a picture with us, Russell?
Yeah, pulling one up.
I'm not going to, because there's going to be a video coming up coming out this week, maybe early next week, where you'll get to see the video and the stills and all of that. So I'm not going to share a picture with you.
You don't want to show anybody what we're looking at?
Not a thing. Maybe Tony can if he wants to bring something up. No, I'm not. I don't like teasers. I want you to get the whole thing, and I have tons of video and tons of stills. We didn't get to drive it. It was just
styrofoam.
It was styrofoam. Yeah. Yes. It was actually fiberglass.
I heard there's some very future styrofoam engineers looking for work.
Yeah, it looked very real. And the windows were opaque, but the lights did work. So at least Toyota put a battery in it.
I mean, but what was it? Lead acid.
Of course it was.
It was like in a car show where you look underneath and it's plugged into the outlet in the floor.
Yeah. Right. Exactly. Yeah. And it actually may have been plugged in. I didn't notice. I just assumed it was a battery. But
like the original Volt when it drove on stage, it was like 3 lead acid batteries. Just rolled it up there.
So sad. That's
so sad. What else came out of Evolution?
Well, It's horrible to be rude to your hosts, but I'm gonna cross the line and go. It was a cool event, and Toyota has a lot to be proud of. And one of the things that came out in an interview that I did yesterday that we're going to talk about shortly, is that in many ways, Toyota's progress with hybrids has really held them back from progress in other areas like battery electric. Their emphasis on hydrogen has held them back from progress in other areas. So there was really not a lot of other news there. Yes, those other battery electric vehicles are going to be introduced in China, and they're going to be here sometime in the next 25 years. There's a new Highlander hybrid. Well, that's not a brand new vehicle.
Is the Highlander hybrid a refresh, or is it a whole new design?
It's a whole new design. I guess the biggest other announcement was the RAV4 plug-in.
Yeah.
I've been waiting for that. Actually, I've been waiting for the RAV4 EV to come back. Right. But in the meantime...
We're plug-in. Now, before you even get those questions sprung up, they gave no information whatsoever. The car is going to debut next month at the LA Auto Show, and the details then may or may not be revealed. But we learned nothing. The car wasn't there, and other than the announcement that the RAV4 plugin exists. If I had to guess, it's going to be a TNGA platform. It's going to be the same one as the Prime. Why it hasn't been introduced as the RAV4 Prime is beyond me, but
maybe it will be.
Maybe it will be. But I would guess it's going to have similar performance to the Prime.
I don't see why they would go any larger. They advertise 25, achievable 35, maybe 40 if you drive it well. I mean, right there, in order to get a larger vehicle to do 35 miles, you're already going to need larger batteries.
There was one hint.
Oh.
There was one hint. Hints. Would you like me to share that hint with you? It was sort of an offhand conversation I was having. Sure. This RAV4 plugin has been tuned for performance, not MPG.
Really?
Which, when you think about the average RAV customer, it's probably going to be a lot of fun to drive. It's going to be a lot of fun to drive. So maybe it'll get 25 rated plug-in miles.
I don't know, because those Tesla powered RAV4 EVs were a total bore to drive. Hated it. every burnout, every donut, every skid mark. Hated it.
All that noise, it hurt my ears.
Yeah. The squilly tires.
My neck is still sore from it being thrown back with the accelerator. I don't know why anybody would want that.
Freaking blast. Yeah.
So we'll see.
So Russell, did you? I feel like the parent that raised their kid to come grow up right and do the right thing and be a good person, and they just went off the track and ended up doing petty crime or something. Like we, three of us on this panel worked so hard trying to talk to people that we thought had some influence and explain why this was a bad direction for Toyota to continue, or to ignore the battery electric vehicles. And do you get any sense from anyone there at all? Is there any remorse? Is there any desire to change the direction? It's so frustrating to me. As a true fan of Toyota and what they've accomplished in the auto industry, to just see them feel like they're just like being left behind.
And if I can piggyback on that question and frame that same question in another way, is anyone in Toyota Motor Sales or marketing in North America frustrated with the position that's dictated to them by Japan? Do they feel they have any influence on the decisions that are being made in Japan?
So to answer Evan's question, I would say, without trying to make too big a deal out of it, absolutely none.
Wow.
I would say that Toyota is exactly where they've always been. and they feel that the future is a diverse powertrain future, and they feel that I mentioned an article last week by Bertel Schmidt in The Drive. I don't know if any of you read that article with the professor that's running the hydrogen fuel cell program for Toyota in Japan. It was a fascinating article. And I think there's hints in there as to why Toyota feels the way they do. There are logical hints. Now, you don't have to agree with them, but they're not like, well, we think hydrogen smells the best. You know what I mean? There wasn't like anything crazy. It's they have this line of thinking, and they're pursuing what they feel they want to pursue. They feel as though hydrogen has this upside, and that batteries, without a huge breakthrough in either the way they're produced or the way they store energy, are pretty much where they're kind of at. I mean, we're going to see incremental improvements, but this isn't, I'm totally lost. The guy who, Moore's Law.
Yeah.
This isn't something that's subject to Moore's Law.
It's a lot slower than that. I mean,
Yeah.
The first Tesla did what? A little over 200 miles, and now we're doing almost 400.
In some
But
cars,
it took 10 years.
Yeah.
And I don't want to preface your discussion, your interview with Matthew Klippenstein. He had mentioned what was it, a 20% increase in performance with a doubling of market penetration. But Moore's Law is a doubling of the technology every 18 months.
Right.
So this is a much slower progression. Yeah.
So let's blend this conversation into the next one. If you have not gone to our channel at youtube.com/whatdrivesus, please do so. If you're not a subscriber, please click that subscribe button. But do watch yesterday's interview with Matthew Klippenstein. He was, by the way, a wonderful interview, mostly because Matthew talked and I just nodded, which was good because Matthew had really important stuff to say that was informed by a knowledgeable person actually doing the work, whereas I'm just this guy. So Matthew Klippenstein, for those of you who don't know him, you would probably know him the most. He used to do the Canadian EV sales tally, the monthly tally for Green Car Reports. I think he did some work for Inside EVs. He also does that for the National Observer. Is that a Canadian paper, Paul?
I don't remember it.
I don't either. Yeah, I have to admit, I'm like. So, anyway, Matthew is a hydrogen
paper.
It is a oh no!
I believe he said National Enquirer.
No, a fine journalistic organ. Matthew is a hydrogen fuel cell engineer. He has spent his entire adult life working in renewables, wind and solar consulting, and now working on hydrogen fuel cells. I did a wonderful interview with him talking about this. And again, vis-a-vis that Bertel Schmidt article in The Drive, I think it's time to relook at hydrogen. Not necessarily, again, I think we've been on point where hydrogen has been all this time. And hydrogen for individually for consumer vehicles is still arguably in the United States a horrible idea. Other places, maybe not so much. But the progress that they made in the fuel cells and the gains that they can make, and here's the important part, as we get to more and more renewable power generation where we can afford to do electrolysis, even though the equation doesn't make sense, even though you lose a little electricity, the idea that hydrogen is this portable power supply, similar in some ways to gasoline, gives us other options.
Yeah, if it's free to make, then it doesn't matter so much that you're wasting some of it. But if you're taking it from natural gas or any kind of fossil fuel, it's not, yeah.
But so Russell, your argument is run the wind power at night when no one needs the energy, crack water into hydrogen, store the hydrogen till morning, fill up the long haul truckers to cross the country in hydrogen. Yeah,
that is exactly the argument. One of the arguments that Matthew made yesterday. Thank you, Paul.
And that can make sense. I don't see it at the corner gas station for the consumer, but for commercial applications, where it's wasted energy anyway. Like if no one uses that energy at night, you can't, you got to store it somehow, and that's one way to store it.
Yeah, and I think one of the one of the positives I think of the show that we put on every week is that I'm not afraid to point out when Russell was wrong. No, so like Russell said, we were on point, and Matthew reinforced that. But the problem is we were narrow focused because we focus primarily on individual transportation, and we've been saying hydrogen doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. Doesn't make sense. Matthew laid out 5 or 6 very strong, like Russell said, logical points, situations in which hydrogen does make sense. And I was listening to the show as I was driving, as I carpool a lot, or not carpool, but I commute pretty far, and I listen to stuff. And as he was going on, I was just like, oh my God, it does make so much sense. And now I'm reframing my entire approach to a hydrogen transportation economy.
So you're drinking the hydrogen Kool-Aid now.
But it's an optimistic skeptic. Is that a thing?
Without hydrogen, I wouldn't be able to drink Kool-Aid.
I mean, if they could get like a lot of the diesel trucks off the interstate and power them with hydrogen fuel cells, that would be great. Now, how economical?
And well, see, and that was exactly one of the things Matthew said. A lot of these trucks could be battery powered around a dock, a port as they're moving stuff around. But if they need to go farther, instead of having a diesel generator to power the batteries, they would have hydrogen. The hydrogen doesn't weigh as much of the batteries, and it doesn't take up as much space as the batteries. And I believe we mentioned this with the earlier article. Now you're not transporting your fuel source as much as you can transport more cargo, and that's where you make your money.
It does take up a lot of volume compared to liquid fuel. When I drove around the FCX Clarity for test drive, it did use that same approach, the serial hybrid, where if I was just putzing around, they just left the fuel cell stack kind of just idle, and it would do it all from the battery. But if I stepped on it and drained the pack, it would fill it back up.
But in that car, you had no trunk space, right? Because
there was 0 trunk space.
Yeah, because you got to put the fuel storage somewhere. But it's a lot lighter than battery storage.
Oh yeah, it's way lighter than batteries, but it's more voluminous than.
But on a semi, you could put it under the trailer, in big.
We'll say that about batteries, though.
I want you guys to all know that I have photos, or I have video of Danny Cooper in the trunk of the Mirai.
How did you do that?
I'm not going to tell you.
Did you cut him up?
Did you cut him up?
No, I remember seeing
I
didn't have to cut
like
him up.
child release to get out the glow-in-the-dark child release thing.
Handle.
He didn't have to cut him up, but he did, just for effect.
Made it easier,
Right.
His legs are really heavy. It's probably not an observation I should share in public.
The roaster.
Recorded medium.
Yeah. Suffice to say, I think I don't want to say that my view personally has changed on hydrogen, but I think it's been expanded, and I welcome that for anything, whether it's my appraisal of a car company or a vehicle or of a type of fuel or whatever. I want to think that I'm always open to new information and to new developments, and to be able to adapt to incorporate that information and make my worldview better informed and more current. And I feel like that's where I'm at with hydrogen. I'm not a yay hydrogen fan, but I'm also maybe going to cut back by maybe 20% on the unicorn jokes. Only 20% though.
Okay, right. There is, and I do encourage all of our viewers and listeners, and if you're watching on YouTube, up in the upper right corner, up here, everyone look to your upper right, because there's an eye, and it is pointing everyone to Russell's interview. So go ahead and pause this video, watch that interview, and then come back. We'll wait. But there are a lot of good points in there. And to touch on something, Russell, that you alluded to earlier and said we would discuss later, I want to loop back to why Toyota hasn't chased electric vehicles. And I thought Matthew made a really good point when he said, when you excel in one area, it causes you to lag in other areas. And that's why right now people were saying Toyota had such the lead in hybrids. Why didn't they jump on batteries? And it was because they were rocking the hybrid world. They were so comfortable just making hybrids that they didn't jump into EV.
Yeah. Why did Kodak develop the first digital camera and then lose it all?
Yeah. And Toyota's sold over like 10 million hybrids worldwide since they started. That's a huge number.
So, you know, his argument, and I'm not going to say it was correct or not, but to me, I thought it made sense.
So
that
I have a couple.
They let other people develop the battery technology. Prices are coming down. They're resting on their laurels, literally. Hey, we make really good hybrids. And now they're tipping their toe into the water of the plugins and still kind of toying with the BEVs, right? They promised a BEV in Japan and China,
China
next year. But in the meantime, they've just been sticking with what they do, which is the hybrids.
And given what's happened just in the last couple of weeks with the Chinese EV market, don't be surprised if they backtrack on that a little bit. Because, EV sales in China have cratered.
So let me ask a couple things. I've been polite and quiet, and I haven't cursed or anything.
What's the fun?
It's the whiskey.
Of Matthew's points that he made of the case of making his case for situations where hydrogen fuel cell vehicles made sense. Did any of those scenarios fit the Mirai?
The scenarios outside of the United States in some places, like, for instance, Japan, that is small, that has an existing hydrogen infrastructure. He made the argument that in places like Europe, it could make sense.
But I think you're exactly right, Evan. Yeah, it really not designed for individual personal transportation.
Okay. And then, what was my second point? I guess I would argue that, Toyota I'd say they no longer are. I think they were appropriately positioned. I kind of disagree with the point that, if you over specialize in one area, it leaves you behind. I think they were appropriately positioned with the hybrids to segue directly into battery electric vehicles. They understood battery technology. They had at least some technological advancement for the electric motors and regenerate. I mean, they understood the market. They understood who they were selling to, and whatever the reasons are in leadership that they've chosen to not stay that course. It's certainly disappointing. I say circling back to that, but it's
all they needed was a plug.
Yeah. I mean, we've been saying it for years. I mean, we all agree it's a huge disappointment that they didn't jump straight into batteries and do that. And we've been in those meetings where the reasons were explained. It had to do with 95% of the world's population not needing 300 miles on a charge, and they looking at weight, price, and charge time. Toyota positioned themselves to be that car for 95% of the world's population that drives less than 20 miles a day. That was it. It's one of the same reasons why most phone batteries don't last more than one day. You're expected to, you could charge them overnight. And that was Toyota's approach. Why do you need a 300-mile battery when you drive under 20 miles a day and you can charge it overnight? And that was one of the reasons that was explained to some of us.
Yeah, but I mean, like every year the Volt, it got more miles every single year, even though that was their initial argument is, hey, it does what you need for your daily commute. And then they canceled it.
They seemed, then they canceled it. But they still seem to have a better sense of their market and their audience and what people wanted.
Right. And also, I'm not making Toyota's argument. I'm repeating what I've heard.
Oh, yeah.
I'm disappointed that they haven't done it. I'm just saying, here's what I think, here's what I know was some of their reasoning. And the reason I bring that up is I'm now expecting someone to be typing comments saying, "But Tony, you're full of shit." And no, I'm simply repeating what Toyota has said to me personally.
I do want to. There's an argument in sports, and this will shock most everyone who listens and watches, and everyone on the show, because I don't do a lot of sports metaphors. But there's a thing in sports that I like. It's a single word, and it's the mic drop. It's the end of the argument, and that's when somebody just says scoreboard. And you can't argue with Toyota's win-loss record. They're making money. They're growing their company. They're making more cars. Now, are they doing it the way we want them to? No. Are they doing it the best way for the planet? No. But that's not necessarily their job. They're not a nonprofit here to make the world better. They're here to make a product and make money and keep their company going and hopefully not do it in a bad way.
So to some degree, I agree with you. And I'm a score.
That's horrifying,
look at the
Evan.
Final score too, but I think if we look at the scoring trends, the Model 3 is making an impact in Prius sales and in the hybrid sales.
But Tesla's not making any money.
Well,
so yeah, but
right,
they're tiny.
Where's this going? What's the if we extend this trend out another 5 or 10 years, how far behind is Toyota going to be?
Not at all.
Now, I know we were going to talk about this. We were going to talk about this later, and I
had
pulled up inside EV scoreboard shows the Prime is still selling more cars month over month. And I know we were going to talk about this later.
More cars month over month than what?
The Prime, there's more Prime sales than Model 3?
No, not more Prime than sales. More Prime this month than last month. Last month than the month
okay, I was about to say.
No, I don't.
Yeah, but how many Primes do they sell compared to Model 3s?
No, but that's not the point. That's not what we're doing. We just talked about, and somehow we got into Toyota strategy. We were not originally comparing manufacturer to manufacturer. We were simply talking
they're trading up, which means they're doing something right.
Yes.
Again, I would go back to I'm a supporter of Toyota. I think they've done a lot of things right over the history of that company, and I think they produce fantastic cars. And that's where my frustration is this isn't coming from it of Tesla's better, fuck Toyota. Mine is more, I want Toyota to succeed in this environment as well. I don't want them to become the next Kodak, right? I want them to join in this movement that Tesla's initiating and be successful in the long run.
There are some assumptions there, Dr. Fusco, that aren't necessarily in evidence. Would you agree to that?
Yeah.
Okay, fair enough. Then
I do. I mean, look, this is a big complex industry. No freaking question about that. But things can change very, very quickly. One more war with the Middle East and gas prices shoot up to $8 a gallon in the U.S., like where they ought to be compared to the rest of the world. And all of a sudden, people are going to start shitting bricks. And the automobile market, at least for the personal automobiles, is going to shift quickly and dramatically.
And that's how Toyota got their foothold in the 70s. I mean, they had
gas lines,
a cheap Corolla that was $29.95 that got 40 miles to the gallon or whatever the equivalent was back then, and you could park your Chevy Impala, and drive the Corolla.
Yep.
Exactly. And we all want the same thing. We all want every manufacturer to succeed and move us forward. I mean, shit, that's why we've been doing this for 9 years.
And I think if Toyota at the corporate level puts their engineering talent on EVs, they could come out with a powerhouse of a vehicle. I mean, they've got some brilliant engineering. I mean, if anybody's going to be a Tesla killer, it could be Toyota.
Yep.
As far as a practical car, it won't be sexy, may not be the quickest accelerating, but it will be rock solid, reliable, cheap to own, cheap to run. And if they put their mind to it, it's going to affect the whole industry.
I agree.
You don't need to kill Tesla. We just need more clean transportation. I mean,
right? Yeah,
it's like Greta says, it's not getting any better unless we do something about it.
Yeah. We don't need to kill each other off. And again, that was another one of the points in the Matthew interview. Why is there always this levels of superiority?
The 24-hour news cycle.
No. Well, just the I drive a hybrid. I'm better than an internal combustion engine.
Right.
Oh yeah, well I drive an EV and I'm better than your hybrid. Oh yeah, well I drive and I forgot the plug-in hybrid that's in there somewhere in the middle. Well, I ride my bike to work every day, so I'm better than that. And I think Russell said I whittled my bike out of a block of wood, so I'm better than the one that you bought made out of metal.
Right.
I mean, so there's always going to be this competition. One group is better than your. No, it doesn't need to be that way. We need to all coexist, and we need to all acknowledge each other's strengths situationally.
We all need to just do better. That's all.
Yeah.
That's all. Evan, I was gonna argue with Evan, but you know what? I don't want to. So what I'm going to do is go to Tony, who has. Speaking of, we don't have to kill this car company.
Oh my God, I was
Sorry,
thinking
Tony.
that as I was saying it. Yeah. We want everyone to succeed. Unfortunately, it doesn't always turn out that way. And it turns out, and I always get his name wrong. Russell, you're better with names than I am.
No, the CEO dude. What's his name? Like
Yeah, Jay Yuting. Yeah. Okay, so the owner and the founder of Faraday, is filing for bankruptcy in the United States.
Faraday Failure.
Faraday Future.
Yeah. Actually, what I was surprised. Yeah. Future Fugitives is I was actually surprised to read that the name of the company was actually, as it was listed, Faraday and Future LLC. That was interesting. But so he's filing for bankruptcy, restructuring bankruptcy here in the United States to sell off the assets of Faraday. This is to cover what is expected or estimated to be $2.3 billion in debt claims. The overwhelming majority are creditors in China. And what really struck me as interesting is that throughout here, it talks about the bankruptcy, but then also preparing for an IPO. What? Now, that didn't make any sense to me, and I was hoping one of you could explain.
Well, they claim
I think they're partnering with WeWork.
Yeah.
They claimed that it wouldn't affect operations somehow.
What operations? What are they operating?
The whole story of Faraday Future.
One of their creditors is the styrofoam.
So division by zero.
Yeah.
No, it is sad when any. I mean, we always throw them under the bus, but when any EV company fails, it's not good because the gas heads are going to say, "Oh, look at that! It's a bad technology. No one wants it. They can't make money." I think it was just poor management and lack of resource management.
And if they would have worked on something and made a car and had a press conference and said, "Hey, look, this is what we did," but the fact that it was so flashy and it was so out there and there were so many promises that were missed and there were so many bobcats pushing around tumbleweeds and the whole Nevada agreement, and there was so much out there, and they just built up so much press that you didn't have to look very hard to see through the BS. Yeah. And just so for all the viewers, I sent out an email to everyone, talking about this article, and I want to make sure that we do make it a point to make sure there are thousands of employees at Faraday right now who are being directly affected by this. And we have nothing against any of those people. We hope they all find jobs and work and,
with one exception,
except the CEO.
Marketing and PR, they can all burn up.
That's okay. Yeah.
Sorry.
We could say that about most companies.
Yeah.
Don't quote me, but yeah.
A lot of really smart, hardworking people are being directly affected by this. And this is another reason why we hate to see companies fail, because we're talking real humans here.
Yeah. Yeah. People whose lives are counting on it to make a mortgage payment or to pay off medical bills or whatever, just to make rent.
Mm-hmm.
At the same time, if you are an investor and we're thinking about Faraday and we're not watching our show, before you invested. Make a note.
I do think
that same investor bought Uber and Lyft stock, so
and Beyond Meat and yeah. So yeah, it's sad, and it surprises no one who's watching the show. Here's sort of I don't want to say this is the flip side, but this is sort of a variation on that same theme. Dyson announced this week that they were terminating their EV project. They did all the engineering, they came up with designs, and they looked at it and they said, there's no way in hell we can make money on this. So they're shutting it down. I've been 14 years of doing this. I've never seen anyone be so rational and logical and so transparent. Cheers to Dyson for saying, hey, guess what? You know what? We can't do this.
I don't know. Their company's always sucked.
They're what?
Except for their ball barrow.
From get-go.
That's...
A vacuum choke ball?
Yeah, it was a vacuum.
That was a good one. That was a good vacuum choke.
Man, totally went over
my understanding is that it was a surprise to everyone who actually worked on the electric car project. I mean, they were ready to go to market, and then they got pink slips. Or actually, they were actually told they would be reshuffled around. But that means that a certain amount of people are not going to retain employment with the company.
Yeah.
Well, he had said in this email he sent out that there are over 600 or nearly 600 people working on the project, and there are vacancies in the company that they'll try to relocate everyone. I just hope that those vacancies are equal. It's not like you're a lead software engineer and here's a spot in facilities management.
You can write the software for the hand blower at the restrooms.
They need it.
I love those.
The new ones are way better. They don't have that that cup that holds all the grime.
I mean, they're awesome the way they just blow the E. coli all the way around. It's amazing.
It's like a maelstrom of germs. It's wonderful. Who wouldn't love a high-speed air mover in a room already filled with... No, we're not going to go there.
So, okay, just running around real quick, show of hands, who really expected to see a Dyson EV?
Yeah.
I was surprised they even announced it to start with.
Yeah, I'm too.
Yeah, I was too.
I mean, it's interesting that they explored
it's one thing to build a vacuum cleaner, but to build a car, that's...
especially a company that on vacuums, not an expert on vacuum production and stuff, but I suspect the margins on vacuum sales, particularly on the bags and all that, is very, very high, and you ain't going to get that in cars. Any kind of car.
Well, and their vacuums don't have bags.
Yeah, they don't use bags.
Yeah,
so they didn't have.
But nonetheless, I mean, the point is they sell high margin items, and and they have investors, and they don't really need to pursue something that doesn't have a high margin.
They would make a Corolla that costs $125,000, and is exactly a Corolla.
Except it would have really cool formed plastic.
It would look nice.
It would look cool.
It would have 5 Cyclone motors in it.
And a hole
batteries
right
that last 11 minutes.
11 minutes. Sometimes. 12 minutes.
Yeah, that's why they couldn't get the car to go more than 12 minutes.
Well, they did buy a battery company, a solid-state battery company.
Yeah.
But it spun at 50,000 RPM.
So Tony has a story about Tesla, and that's all I'm going to say because I didn't want to say it at all.
The EV charging stations?
Yeah, are we going to talk about that, or do you want to not?
Right. Yeah. No. Okay. It's not necessarily about Tesla, but it compares to Tesla. And Brooke Crothers, who is writing for Forbes, he has talked about how he lives in Los Angeles, and there's a lot of Teslas driving around, and Tesla owners don't have to worry that much about charging because there's superchargers just about everywhere in his neighborhood. But the problem is he owns a Bolt, and if he wants to supercharge his Bolt, that's a bit of a charging deserts. As he writes out here, he says, good luck finding a convenient fast charger. And now he differentiates between, of course, level 1, which is home 120, level 2, which is 240, and level 3, which is DC fast charging. And the problem is that there's not enough infrastructure for electric vehicles that are not Teslas. And this is I mean, that's the crux of the article. Basically, he talks about you have to go out of your way. You have to drive like 15 minutes out of your way, and you have to wait in line that could be 40 to 80 minutes. And then of charging, and then you have to get back
if it's not broken,
to where you were. Yeah, if it's not broken, which he mentions, and he went to one where there were several of them and none of them worked. And then he comes out and says, okay, this is where Tesla got it right, and all these other manufacturers need to catch up. Now, here's what I want to pose to you four. Euphoria. No, just you four. So, assuming Tesla is not going to build out superchargers for other manufacturers, what's it going to take to get the non-Tesla supercharging network in place? And that's the question at hand. Is it going to take federal stuff? Is it going to be like the interstate system where we throw a lot of federal money in it? We try to make jobs and build up this infrastructure. Is it going to require a consortium amongst the automobile manufacturers?
So it'll probably take them spinning off the supercharger network, because that's pretty much the only way to get it done. I mean, if you use government money, it's just going to piss people off. And if you get a company to do it, they're going to cluster them around cities like we see today.
Yeah, but what if it was a company like the Flying J truck stops?
They would be good for it.
Or, McDonald's that have the resources to put these things in lots and lots of places that
Shell, Mobile.
Well, and I've said this and they must have looked at the dollars and cents of the thing and not be able to feel like they can't make money on it or something. But I don't get it, man. If you were the first one to do it, everybody else is going to follow.
I think it's a chicken and egg problem. You need the chargers are expensive, and there aren't that many customers out there. We're at 2.5% now, and rising, but still, is it worth the investment?
Yeah, rising and slowly, but yeah.
Casey made the point that I agree with. It's too early. Tesla did it, but they're not making any money on it.
They're lucky if they can even break even on it, and I don't think they're doing that.
At best, right, yeah. At best. Tesla's using it to sell cars, and bless them for that. It's certainly a strong way to sell cars, but I don't necessarily... This is one of those manufacturing problems in a capitalist world that you go, it's not GM's fault that there isn't a charger network. It'd be great if there was, and they would probably sell more EVs if there was a Bolt supercharger network. But this is really, I think it's still too early. And I think this writer, skimming over this article, you know what? We all want things, but guess what? You don't get everything you want.
Yeah.
And
well, I mean,
most people with electric cars charge at home.
Yeah. And Elon invited them all to come out and charge. I don't know what we've seen that they've had meetings with BMW and Rivian. I don't know what it is that's tripping them all up. Is it cost? Is it the fact that they have to use that beautiful little port? I don't know. But I imagine that if they came down to it, like say we had the gas lines tomorrow, I bet you that GM, BMW, and Rivian would all come together and be like, yeah, here, let's make it happen. Because they see that it's selling cars.
Yeah.
It's too
Russell,
bad.
this is...
They can't put their pride away, and all the manufacturers can get together and say, let's build a kick-ass network that rivals Tesla and that works on all our cars.
That would be awesome.
Yeah.
That wouldn't be that hard.
And he does mention that
5%.
He does. Yeah, he does mention that he charges at home, but there are circumstances when for long drives, to whatever, that you want to pull off and you want to super fast charge instead of just doing a level 2.
Hey, I spent the day yesterday with a Tesla Model 3 owner.
Oh.
Driving around San Diego.
Just some stranger you picked up or what?
And was he like stealing wheel covers?
Let's just say there
6
was a
feet
lot
tall.
of Canadian talk coming from the front seats. Okay. And he started out with like 80 miles of range, and we tore into that pretty quickly. We stopped for a few minutes and charged at one supercharger station, which was a 67 kilowatt charger. You don't get that much juice. You know what I mean? You get
the urban
3 mile.
supercharger. Yeah, he had pictures of that one.
And then we went to another supercharger later in the day, and it was only 37.
What? Wow.
Yeah.
That one must have been overheated or something.
It
Or he
was
was sharing a number.
26 stalls, and there were only 12 cars there.
Now, did said visitor drive his own Model 3 from Canada?
Yes.
Did he?
Yeah. So
Right.
obviously, it's Mark Coughlin, who's on this show, who hosts the Tesla Life. Mark and I and our wives spent the day driving around San Diego yesterday. And I was kind of shocked at the 2 supercharging experience because it wasn't so super.
You didn't want to say you got shocked at the supercharger.
But
Yeah, he's on a roll today, boys.
They could have been disrepair, like the Savannah supercharger is that way. You plug in and you're going to be there for a while. Like it's needed repairs for a while.
It said Tesla and it wasn't super.
Right.
That's really strange.
The 61 was an urban supercharger. I saw the pictures of that.
Yeah,
the
yeah.
30
Oh,
is probably broken.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, the urban, that's...
They
So
were
how
both
long did it take him to get from Toronto to San Diego?
I don't know exactly. Apparently, they did some tag team driving and got down into the interesting part of the U.S. pretty quickly.
Yeah, they came through Springfield
Yeah.
while I was in Las Vegas.
Uh,
So I didn't get to see them, and I certainly would have put them up for the night had I known they were coming through. But they did stop at Bandana's Barbecue in Raleigh, though, so I know they had a great experience.
They literally could have dropped in, swung around Lake Michigan, picked up Route 66 at its origin in Chicago, and driven out the
did
entire
that?
length of Route 66.
He did
did
drive part
not
of
do
66.
Yeah, they
He
did.
may be part of it, but
You didn't see that picture of them in front of your house?
well, I did on my doorbell.
Yeah,
That's,
right. And you
yeah.
didn't answer the door, rightfully.
Exactly. I was on my phone. I was like, "There's no way." So I turned off all the lights.
It's going to surprise no one watching or listening to the show that we have a bunch more news to get to, but unfortunately this week we are definitely time constrained. So I'm going to have to call that there. My apologies to Casey and Tony who had more stories. We will get to those next week. But let's do some shout outs and go home, gentlemen. How's that? I'm going to start with Casey, and hopefully his first shout out won't be that I die.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
Well, I mean, I feel bad.
So I have a YouTube channel, youtube.com/KCGreen. That's KACEYGREEN. I've been tearing through some of the backlog of videos that I've been making for you guys. I made some fresh ones. I went to the EV charger station that we talked about, where they ripped out all the gas pumps, put in EV stations. Did a supercharger review, and then a bunch of fun with the Smart Summon, including one where it was working correctly. And then I had a question of, did it have a regression on this latest update? I show the car running around, and it looks a little freaking lost. Take a look.
Nice.
car was
Hey,
drunk.
By the way, we did invoke your name several times yesterday, Casey.
Oh,
Twice, specifically. If only Casey had done a review of these superchargers, we would have known more about them before we got there.
for sure. I worked my way over there.
Exactly. We
You didn't
literally
have-
said that.
Plug share, or you just used the Tesla screen?
Use the Tesla screen. Yeah. One of them
Evan,
was.
can you write reviews on the Tesla screen?
No.
Or comments?
No, but there's an app called Teslab that actually is kind of making some waves in that direction, and actually it's actually pretty cool. They've been working directly with Tesla to have a reporting feature so that when chargers are not functioning properly, they can be reported to Tesla, and it tweets out on a bot on Twitter and things. So doing some pretty cool things.
The hard part with that is it's just so easy just to use the screen, and most owners don't even look at extra apps, even PlugShare, which is super good.
Yeah.
There you go. Paul Guzik.
I'll talk about my business, Boulder Hybrids in Boulder, Colorado. We fix, repair, sell everything hybrid and EV. So check us out at boulderhc.com.
What's the specialty this week?
I got a badass Gen 2 Volt in.
Oh.
Haven't put it on the website yet, but it's got every frickin' feature in it. It's got the super adaptive cruise control and the heated leather seats and all the good toys. So
Why would they get rid of that?
I think it came off lease, and got it at a wholesale auction.
There you go.
Can I interject one more question from the Toyota Evolution thing?
Yeah.
At one point, I leaned over to a Toyota executive and said, something just came to my mind. There's about 3,000 Mirais that are coming off lease in the next 6 months.
Are they going to crush them?
Do you guys have a plan for what you're going to do with those? And they just smiled and went, "That's a very good question, Russ." I am very curious to know if there's going to be like some $10,000 Mirais floating around.
Didn't even lie and say, "Oh no, yeah, we've got a plan," but didn't even lie.
Nope. That was the response. Evan Fusco.
I'm Googling hydrogen fueling stations
in
Missouri.
I got to tell you, as much fun as I think the second generation Mirai is going to be, I really enjoyed the first generation Mirai.
Yeah, if you could figure out how to fuel it, it would be a great tool.
Yeah,
I completely agree.
Well, it's not that hard. Hydrogen is the most abundant element. You just have to you just catch it. You just pull it out of the air.
With like
a so I'm not plugging nothing anyway, so I'm just wasting everybody's time while I Google. But
there we go. Okay, well then.
Good to be back, but I'm out for next at least week. So
are you?
I'm going away.
He's going far away. Okay, another Iceland trip coming.
Iceland, Australia.
No, this will be a cruise. I'm going to Puerto Rico and Antigua and St. Kitts.
Man,
the one here might still be open.
It is good to be Evan Fusco. Well, speaking of good, Tony Schaefer, it's good to be you. Bring us home, my friend.
Yes, I want to give a shout out to all of our Canadian friends, fans, listeners, viewers. Happy Canadian Thanksgiving this past Monday to everyone. So, I hope you give thanks to Legal Pot. This is the first Thanksgiving with legalized marijuana in Canada. And if you want to read all the news that we're reading, make sure you check us out online. We do have our Facebook page, facebook.com/whatdrivesus. Leave us comments, suggest news items. The Faraday Future received several requests and messages from our viewers and listeners. Hey, you should talk about this. You should talk about this. Thanks to each and every one of you. And if you do use Flipboard as your news aggregator, as I do, be sure to subscribe to the What Drives Us magazine. Philip Barclay and I are throwing articles in there on a regular basis. Shout out to Philip, who is I'm not going to give away his location, but he was going to travel from Canada into Chicago to a Blackhawks game where his team was playing. Unfortunately, a wicked snowstorm snowed him in, and he gave me the right of first refusal on those tickets, and my wife and I already had obligations, and I couldn't take him up on that. Thank you so much for the offer. I was able to find a coworker to take the tickets off his hands, so they didn't go to complete waste.
There you go.
So
that's so beautiful.
Yeah. I really appreciate the offer, Philip.
As always, I want to thank Michael Mannering for our theme music. Visit him at manthing.com. Buy a song, do something. Just don't buy anything on CD Baby because CD Baby sucks.
Exactly.
Give us some money on the
Patreon.
On iTunes, whatever, or just buy it directly from Michael. I want to thank everybody who showed up on the show tonight to do that. I appreciate it very much. Dr. Evan Fusco, Mr. Casey Green, Mr. Paul Guzik, and of course, Mr. Tony Schaefer. The whole, my screen never goes to the grid, so I have no idea where anyone is.
Yeah. Well, what's funny is the grid moves around as we talk.
Yeah, it does. Yeah.
It does.
Yeah.
All I have are little circles. I want to thank each and every one of you, of course, out there. You're the reason we do this show. Tune in next week and find out what drives us. And that's the theme music.
There it is.
See you next week, everybody. Thank you.